I've had enough of being around a woman like you who doesn't even have basic manners. Can't you just stop trying to be a part of this family circle? Being with you just makes me feel sick. There's no mother in this house for me. It was Dad who raised me. You're just a stranger. So why don't you just leave?
The daily onslaught of harsh words from my husband, Aaron, and son, Stanley. I remember each and every one of those comments clearly. For 13 long years, I've been subjected to unkind words and terrible actions from my husband, Aaron, and my son, Stanley. Because of that, my heart was in tatters. I couldn't muster the strength to keep trying for them anymore. Only I can respond to the screams of my heart. I have to protect myself. On the day of Stanley's graduation, I decided to pack my bags and leave my family behind. My name is Katie, a housewife in her 40s. I live with my husband and our eldest son. I met Aaron through a friend's introduction. Back then, Aaron was a man of gentle character, well regarded among our friends. After his persistent pursuit, we started dating. I was drawn to his boyish charm and, impressed by a fancy restaurant he strained his budget to take me to, I accepted his proposal. Our new son, Stanley, was irresistibly adorable, and we resolved to raise him with all our love. I believed our trouble-free life would continue forever. The first crack in this belief happened when Stanley was 5 years old. "Mom, you're a bad person, right?" One day, Stanley said this out of the blue. Confused by his sudden words, I looked puzzled, and Stanley continued. "Dad's always sad because you won't quit your job. You're always making him unhappy." Since we didn't rely on our parents, my husband and I took care of Stanley together. Stop filling Stanley's head with nonsense. If you have a complaint, say it to my face. Don't make Stanley say it. That day, I confronted Aaron in his room. I couldn't believe he would teach such things to our young son. If he had complaints, he should have spoken to me directly. Using Stanley to convey his message was beyond unreasonable.
I've been annoyed with you for a long time. I'm the breadwinner, yet you refuse to quit your job. Acting as if you're the one supporting us, you push Stanley's care onto me, saying you're busy with work. I think that's pitiable for Stanley.
After that, Aaron said nothing more to me. No matter how many times I tried to speak to him, he ignored everything. It was as if he had no intention of having a conversation. Aaron seemed to have indoctrinated Stanley with various things. That I had no interest in Stanley, that I didn't care about the family, things like that. At first, Stanley didn't quite understand, but as time passed, he grasped what Aaron was saying and started treating me terribly. For 13 years, I lived under their cold stares. Stanley no longer trusted me as a mother and treated me like a stranger.
Mom, you're always away from home and don't care about the family. If you really cared, wouldn't you prioritize spending time with us?
One day, after returning from work and hastily preparing dinner, Stanley said this to me. In his mind, I was someone who constantly left the house and didn't spend time with the family. No matter what I said, he wouldn't trust me. I'm just working for the family. We need money to live. Stanley, you want to go to medical school, right? It costs a lot. That's why I've been working so hard. So please don't say such hard things. I didn't know if Stanley would accept my words, but if I gave up and let the accusation stand, it would be the end. Stanley was already a 12th grader, old enough to think for himself. That's why I earnestly talked to him.
Save your excuses. I heard from Dad. We can get by just fine on his income. You've always been against quitting your job, even though you were asked to. That alone makes it clear you don't care about the family, and any excuses you make is pointless.
Indeed, Aaron had been asking me to quit my job for a long time. Aaron always felt that his role as the breadwinner was diminished because I continued to work after our marriage. But the idea that we could live comfortably on Aaron's salary alone was a complete lie. If it had been possible, I would have quit my job long ago, become a full-time housewife as Aaron wanted, and devoted myself to raising Stanley. But if I quit, Stanley might not be able to afford medical school, or we might even struggle to make ends meet. I thought this, though I never said it out loud. I realized arguing would be the end of it. Stanley really didn't know anything. He had always been looked after by Aaron, so he simply accepted whatever Aaron told him. Despite understanding this, I felt a surge of resentment towards Stanley. Why did he accept everything Aaron said but never listen to my words? Stanley seemed intent on berating me, but there was no effort to understand me. The family bond was irreparably broken, and I had no means to fix it. As Stanley's graduation approached, I wondered if I'd even be welcome. I might be treated coldly and dismissed, but still Stanley was my precious son. I felt it wouldn't be right to miss his graduation. We had dinner as a family of 3 that rare day. No matter how busy, I always made sure to be home for dinner. Sometimes I'd just eat and return to work, but I wanted to keep this time for our family. Aaron usually avoided me during meals, but that day, he came out of his room and joined us without saying anything. The silent dinner table felt a bit sad, a feeling I'd grown accustomed to over 13 years. In the middle of this awkward yet familiar setting, Aaron spoke up.
I've had enough of being around a woman like you, who doesn't even have basic manners. Can't you just stop trying to be a part of this family circle? Being with you just makes me feel sick.
His words stunned me. I searched for something to say in response, but found nothing. I was shocked by Aaron's words. Stanley chimed in, as if encouraged by Aaron.
There's no mother in this house for me. It was Dad who raised me. You're just a stranger, so why don't you just leave?
Stranger? No mother? Despite the cold treatment, I had always tried to keep our family of 3 together. Stanley's words cut deep. I left the meal unfinished and retreated to my room, where tears flowed endlessly. I had reached my limit. My heart was screaming, and I couldn't be a part of this family any longer. I felt a clarity after admitting this to myself, followed by a surge of anger towards them. I had been trampled on for 13 years despite my efforts for family. I resolved to cut ties with this family. I decided to leave the house on the day of Stanley's high school graduation. I didn't attend the ceremony. It would have been a waste of time, as I wouldn't have been welcomed. Aaron had taken the day off for his precious son's graduation. I was the only one left at home, which was just as well. I gathered only the essentials in my room, clothes for a few days and daily necessities, packed as much as I could. Then I left a note in the living room. It stated that I would never return to this house, that from now on, I was no longer a part of this family. The house should be transferred to Aaron's name, and that they should figure out the tuition fees on their own. Finally, I left a divorce application, filled out by me, asking them to complete and submit it. That was the end of everything. I am no longer a part of the family with Aaron and Stanley. I've tried my best for 18 years since Stanley was born. Things started to go wrong when Stanley turned 5. Maybe all the blame lies with Aaron, and I should resent him, but I can't help feeling hatred towards Stanley for never believing me. This realization made me sigh at my own pettiness. But now, it's all over. I'm leaving this house, abandoning the family to live on my own. Reflecting on it, it was a long and hard life. Yet I always cared deeply about my family. That much is an undeniable truth. Tears welled up. Knowing it was the end overwhelmed me. I sat down and cried loudly. Grateful for this first time that no one was around. After crying my heart out, I picked up my bag with my belongings and left the house. Standing at the front door, "Thank you for everything," I said to the house. This house was given to me by my father when I started my married life with Aaron. I had discussed the matter with my father beforehand, and he said,
"The house is yours to do as you wish."
So I decided to leave it to Aaron and his family. I planned to stay in a weekly rental apartment I had arranged in advance. Living alone for the first time in years felt like paradise. I continued searching for a new home while working. Even in such times, I never resented my job. On the contrary, it helped me forget the painful memories and allowed me to immerse myself in work. My parents were a bit worried about me, but I assured them that I was not neglecting my health and would take a break if needed. That day, I had spent a considerable amount of time at work, not having checked my mobile phone. I was surprised to see over 300 missed calls from Aaron when I finally looked at it. The call log was filled from morning to just an hour ago. Messages from Aaron were also lined up.
"Please answer the phone,"
and
"I have something important to discuss."
saying, "What on earth are you planning on doing now?" I wondered why he would call so desperately now, after showing no reaction when I left. Although I didn't want to talk to Aaron, I was curious about why he was so persistent. "Hello, Aaron, what do you want?" I ended up calling Aaron despite not wanting to talk to him. Hearing from me, Aaron responded with a relieved tone.
"Hello, Katie? Good, you're there. Something terrible has happened. Please come home right now."
I was puzzled by his words. What could have happened? I was curious about the content, but that is a different story. But I had already decided never to return to that house. "I'm sorry, but I can't go to the house. I'm no longer part of your family. I've decided not to enter that house ever again. If you have something to say it over the phone, otherwise I'm hanging up." I would never cross that threshold again. I had left that family and house behind. I have no right to enter that house ever again. Even Aaron, who usually doesn't listen, seemed to understand my feelings this time and said,
"I see."
He then started explaining the situation briefly. After I left, Aaron and Stanley initially seemed to live happily. Without me, who was strict about finances, they indulged in luxury using the money I had saved and did as they pleased with my old room. But soon, problems arose. On Aaron's first payday without me, he went to withdraw his salary, expecting a large sum since I wasn't withdrawing living expenses. But what awaited Aaron was despair. The salary that was deposited into Aaron's account was significantly less than what he had expected. Yes, Aaron earned quite a low income. His company was known in the industry for poor compensation, and Aaron, unaware of this, had continued working there without considering a job change.
"There's no way we can live on this little money. I finally realized it was all because of your hard work, that we managed to survive. Please, I'm begging you, come back."
Aaron pleaded desperately over the phone. His tone conveyed a realization that without me, they truly couldn't manage, and their lives were heading towards hardship. If it were the old me, I would have immediately agreed to return home upon hearing Aaron's words. But the decision I made the day I left home was firm. No matter how much Aaron begged, I would never return to that house or live as a family with him again. "I'm sorry, but you'll have to give up on that idea. I should have discussed the salary issue with you. I'm sorry, but I really don't intend to come back. Please find another solution without relying on me." The audacity of them relying on me after such terrible treatment was too convenient. I knew that even if I returned, I would be taken for granted again, after a short period of gratitude. I firmly stated my intention not to return and hung up the phone. Aaron called several more times, but I ignored them and blocked his number. I thought it was all over. I thought so. But my former family was more persistent than I had anticipated. After blocking Aaron, I started to relax, but then my phone began ringing incessantly again. Why? I had blocked Aaron's number. Checking my mobile, I saw it was Stanley calling. I was surprised. Stanley had treated me coldly for 13 years. He must have truly believed I was a careless mother who neglected her family. Stanley was always proud and found it hard to ask for help. Feeling a sense of obligation, I answered the call. "Hello?" Stanley spoke in an urgent tone.
"Mom, you have to come back right now. You heard from Dad, right? We're in big trouble. If things stay this way, we'll be thrown out of the house. We can't end up homeless."
Thrown out of the house? What did he mean by that? I quickly realized the implication. Aaron's salary wasn't enough to cover the house's maintenance costs. I had always paid for the necessary expenses, like the house and car, from my salary. That's why we never had any issues, even though Aaron's salary was meager. But now I was gone. There was no one to help out with a low income, so they couldn't afford the maintenance, leading to their financial crisis.
"That's not all. At this rate, I might not even be able to pay for my tuition. I worked so hard to get into that prestigious private university's medical school, but it's pointless if I can't pay the fees."
Stanley had indeed been working hard to get into medical school. He didn't report to me directly, but he got into a famous private university, and I had been working hard to save for his tuition. If you can't pay the tuition, why not apply for a scholarship? There must be some available for someone like you, Stanley. America has systems to help people in such situations, like scholarships. As an adult, he could work and pay it back later. There should be many options available for someone like Stanley.
I don't want to take out a scholarship. All my friends have their parents pay for them, and I'd be the only one getting into debt. My future salary would be reduced. If you paid for it, it would all be solved.
Stanley seemed to dislike the idea of borrowing a scholarship. I might have been able to easily pay for his college and tuition from the money I had saved, but now I was no longer part of the family. It seemed absurd to give away my earnings to someone who wasn't family anymore. You're still just as selfish as ever. If you don't want to borrow a scholarship, then give up. I absolutely will not pay your tuition. With Aaron's salary, it's impossible anyway. I said this in a stern tone due to Stanley's utter selfishness and over the phone. But Stanley's voice faltered, and he continued, refusing to give up.
Mom, don't be so harsh. Aren't we family? Shouldn't families help each other out in times of need?
After all this time, treating me as anything but family, even saying I was a stranger, had he forgotten all that? Who was it that said I was a stranger? Who said it was strange for me to be in the house? Who said they didn't have a mother? Surely you haven't forgotten all that, have you? Stanley's words reopened the wounds in my heart, wounds I had been ignoring since that day, the day Stanley firmly told me we weren't a family. Tears naturally started to flow. How could he think so self-centered and not consider the pain he caused? Stanley, undoubtedly inheriting Aaron's traits, never thought about the hurt he inflicted. Don't ever try to act like my family again. We are no longer a family. Give up on the tuition fee. I will never help you two again. Goodbye. With that, I hung up the phone. At the last moment, Stanley cried out,
Mom, wait!
But my heart no longer had the capacity to listen to such words. I blocked Stanley's contact after that. I hadn't mentioned this weekly rental apartment, so they wouldn't be able to find me. Now I was truly free from my family. As expected, Aaron didn't want to divorce and hadn't submitted the divorce papers I left, so I hired a lawyer and proceeded with divorce mediation. The divorce was granted. The 13 years of terrible treatment weighed heavily, and I was able to claim compensation. It was clear that Aaron couldn't afford to pay, but my lawyer advised claiming it, so I did. With the house sold, Aaron and Stanley now live in an old apartment. Aaron works day and night, and Stanley, unable to attend university, is barely getting by with part-time jobs. My in-laws were furious when they found out about my situation, and haven't helped them at all. They are now struggling to get by day to day. As for me, I moved to a new house, and am living a relaxed life. Initially, I felt lonely without a family, but spending time with friends and my parents has been stress-free and peaceful, unlike the time spent with Aaron and Stanley. After 13 years of hellish life, dedicating time to myself has been slowly healing my wounded heart. From now on, I'll pursue my own happiness, striving for a blissful end that anyone would envy.